Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is pleading for the violence to stop in Gaza so that more aid can make its way to the Palestinian people. Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says many of the attacks against Jews in our country are being funded by Iran. And the Alberta government announced new ways it is boosting safety in a number of communities, including right here in Lethbridge.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. The Alberta government says it has a plan to help boost public safety in southern Alberta communities. Public Safety and Emergency Services Minister Mike Ellis says it begins with a new crime-fighting unit for our region.
I am pleased to announce a new team of 6 scan investigators from the Alberta Sheriffs will be based right here in Lethbridge. This is a new regional team that will cover an area roughly bounded by Vulcan to the north, Crow's Nest Pass to the west, and the U.S. border to the south, and the provincial boundary with Saskatchewan to the east. This team is dedicated to supporting the local communities, is a tool in the toolbox to help assist with law enforcement. Over the past few months, I have spoken about our province's focus on border patrol. We will not allow drug cartels and organized criminals to import illegal drugs and guns and human trafficking, which is occurring and coming across the border.
The Public Health Emergencies Governance Review Panel released its final report to the province, which includes over 90 recommendations for consideration. Now, the group led by Preston Manning was tasked with reviewing the legislation and governance employed during the COVID-19 pandemic and to come up with recommendations to better prepare Alberta to handle future public emergencies. The recommendations fell into 3 main categories, which included strengthening the Alberta Emergency Management Agency, developing inventory of scientific advice and advisors that can be drawn upon in the event of a public emergency, and reject province-wide school closures as a policy option in responding to an emergency, except in the most exceptional of circumstances. The panel's report also said the province must better protect the rights and freedoms of Albertans during an emergency period and to increase overall capacity of Alberta's healthcare system to respond to public health emergencies. Panel Chair Preston Manning says, quote, "It is my hope that by adopting our recommendations, the government will be better equipped to cope with future emergencies and that the impacts on Albertans' livelihood, civil liberties, and mental health can be mitigated to the greatest extent possible." Alberta NDP leader Rachel Notley was not impressed with the Manning report. She says what caught her attention the most about the study was Chapter 3, which she says supports conspiracy theorists.
Which really reads like an invitation to conspiracy theorists and to pseudo-scientific purveyors at the expense of evidence-based science and medicine. Under no circumstances should any public servant in this province, physician or otherwise, be compelled to give serious consideration, for instance, to the delivery of horse tranquilizer to people who are suffering from a serious disease or illness. So it's an incredibly irresponsible report, and it's hardly surprising based on some of the extremist fringe views we have seen expressed by both Daniel Smith and Preston Manning.
There may be an entire communications blackout in Gaza because of lack of fuel supplies. That's according to the main Palestinian communications company. Israel allowed the first shipment of fuel to enter the region, but the United Nations says it's not enough to aid the poor humanitarian situation there. Meanwhile, health officials in Gaza say Israeli tanks are on the grounds of the region's largest hospital. Soldiers have entered the buildings, including those housing intensive care units. Israel declared war on Hamas after the terrorist group killed more than 1,200 people on October 7th and took around 240 hostages, which have not yet been returned. Health officials in Gaza say weeks of retaliatory strikes have now killed more than 12,000 people. Global Affairs Canada says it is continuing to communicate with Canadians, permanent residents, and their families who are wanting to leave Gaza. The department says it is asking them to have their travel documents on hand and be ready to leave on short notice. No one connected to Canada has yet been cleared to leave as of yet. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is urging Israel to use restraint to protect civilian life as the war with Hamas continues in Gaza. Trudeau says the price of justice cannot be the continued suffering of Palestinian civilians. He says the violence must stop so the Palestinians can receive life-saving medical services, food, fuel, and water.
Even wars have rules. All innocent life is equal in worth, Israeli and Palestinian. I urge the government of Israel to exercise maximum restraint. As the world is watching on TV, on social media, we're hearing the testimonies of doctors, family members, survivors, kids who've lost their parents. The world is witnessing this, the killing of women and children, of babies. This has to stop.
As fighting escalates between Israel and Hamas, Christian satellite TV ministry Sat7 is interviewing various Christian leaders in the Middle East who say that the church really needs to be the salt and light in the region. We have more now in this report from Peter Wooding with the Global News Alliance.
Christian leaders in the Middle East are calling on believers to stand in the gap as a voice for peace, justice and reconciliation as the Holy Land is torn apart by conflict. Speaking on Sat7's live current affairs program, You Are Not Alone, the founder of Masalahah Ministry of Reconciliation in Jerusalem, Dr. Salim Munir, called on Christians to seek peace. And speaking to the Global News Alliance, he said it's vital believers of all backgrounds engage in their communities in these desperate times as salt and light.
In our society, all around us are many people that are created in God's image and likeness, that they are in suffering, in distress. And praying is important, but Jesus said, I am with those people.
And Sat7 founder Terry Ascott issued this urgent prayer request for peace and reconciliation in the region.
So pray for Christians that they would be salt and light and bring this perspective of reconciliation and hope for the future. Because without some kind of hope for the future, there's not going to be an end to this conflict in our lifetime.
And through the ongoing broadcasts into the Middle East, Sat7 continues to offer the peace of Christ to those impacted by the conflict. Peter Wooding reporting for the Global News Alliance.
Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says he's quite concerned about the rise of anti-Semitism here in Canada. He says free speech is one thing, but keep the violence out of our country when it comes to attacks on Jews.
You can have any opinion you want about what's happening in the Middle East. That's your business. But you do not have the right to attack your fellow Canadians. That is not acceptable, and Conservatives call for anyone who's been involved in these terrorist attacks to be immediately arrested and jailed. All levels of government should work to protect Canadians against this terrorism. Anti-Semitism is an age-old evil. We must speak out against it every day and every way. And our governments must take tangible action to protect against that evil. I should also add that we should immediately ban terrorist or all terrorist organizations in Canada. I believe that some of this terrorism has been incited by the IRGC, which is the Iranian government's terrorist arm.
The war in Ukraine is fast approaching 2 years now. The Russians invaded on February 24th of 2022. It's estimated that since that time, tens of thousands of Ukrainian civilians have lost their lives, along with hundreds of thousands of military casualties on both sides. There's more of a push now to have foreign countries, not just Canada, help to train Ukrainian soldiers, including help from the French military.
Alors, on sent forcément de la peur, on sent quelques a priori par rapport au combat qui les attend, mais néanmoins tout notre travail ici, c'est justement de leur faire maîtriser cette peur, ces appréhensions, de manière à pouvoir les maîtriser, les contenir et pouvoir conduire les actions avec tous les savoir-faire que nous leur avons inculqués.
Canada's Heritage Minister, Pascal St-Onge, says her department has given the CRTC its final directions to implement the Online Streaming Act, also known as Bill C-18. It aims to regulate streaming services such as Netflix, Amazon, YouTube, and Apple without impacting content creators.
I think that, first of all, the sector needs to adapt to where the Canadian public is today. And we know that Canadians look for their news and for their content online. Now, we want to make sure that on the different platforms that the Canadian public likes and look up to, that Canadian content is easily found and accessible. So that's one major change that I hope to see as quickly as possible in the system. And the second part is making sure that our cultural industries are still viable, strong, and vibrant. And if the modernization didn't happen, unfortunately, I think that we would continue to see a decline of our capacity to produce Canadian content.
Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe says it will be up to school divisions to determine any potential punishment for a teacher who does not follow the province's pronoun policy. His comment comes after a number of teachers signed a petition saying that they will not follow the new law which prevents kids under the age of 16 from changing their names or pronouns at school without parental consent. The petition says the legislation harms gender-diverse students. While Moe says the government has had discussions about policing divisions to make sure that they are following the policy, he didn't rule out checking in on them at some point. Moe says his government is also looking at ways to support students who may be having difficulties at home.
Whether that be in with their family dynamics or community dynamics, whatever that might be. We heard Councillor Davies talk about some of the mental health challenges that we're seeing, not just in adults, but in children today. And so that is an even broader approach than just in our schools, but on a community-wide approach. And so, we're looking at some of the rapid access counseling services that we have expanded. I think we have them available to adults in 30 communities, now expanding 13 of those communities to youth. Is there a possibility for us to expand some of those services? A year or two ago, we had made a commitment to work with school divisions to ensure that at least one individual in each school has some mental health training to identify some of the challenges that our children might be facing.
The head of the Canada Pension Plan Investments says Albertans should not want to lose the benefits of the federal plan. John Graham made the pitch in front of a Calgary business crowd this week. He says there's a strong business and public policy case for Albertans to stay with what he called an established investment fund with a proven track record. He says as a large fund, the CPP offers the benefit of risk pooling and diversification and allows Albertans to take it with them if they choose to retire out of province. RCMP say they've charged a man with manslaughter in the death of a 5-year-old boy living in a foster home south of Edmonton. Police say emergency crews responded to a call in June of last year that a child had died at a residence near Leduc. 47-year-old Darren Gardner was arrested and charged in mid-October. He's been released from custody and will appear in provincial court in Leduc on Thursday. An endowment fund is being set up at the University of Lethbridge by the family of a couple who were killed by a grizzly bear in Banff National Park. Doug Inglis and Jenny Guzzi, both age 62, died along with their dog following a bear attack during a fall backpacking trip. Inglis worked as an adjunct professor in Lethbridge. Both he and Guzzi worked at Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada here in our city. The endowment will be used to offer 2 student awards in each of their names at the university annually. Lethbridge police have laid drug charges against 2 men. The first is 51-year-old Christopher Francis Quebec, who is charged with 2 counts of possession of a controlled substance for the purpose of trafficking and possession of the proceeds of crime. Also, 27-year-old William Douglas Ewan Potter faces various drug-related offenses along with possession of stolen property. Quebec is scheduled to appear in court on January the 11th and Ewan Potter on January 26th. A Lethbridge established nonprofit group dedicated to rescuing victims of human trafficking just opened a new shelter in Mexico. Not for Sale has been around for 14 years and was spearheaded by Joylyn Stickle of Parallel Church. She says they've been rescuing young girls from the sex trade industry as young as 3 years old.
So we have been in Mexico for 7 years working toward opening a home for survivors of human trafficking, mostly little girls who have been in the sex trade. And we want to bring them into a home that helps them heal, helps them be children again, helps them understand that they are truly loved and truly valued for who they are. And in the last few weeks, we have managed to get our license from the government. So not only have we been able to push through with our team down there and with our donors up here to be able to open that home, they have actually licensed 2 more homes as well. So we're very excited to be able to spearhead what is happening in Mexico as far as helping children from the sex trade there.
Stickle says Mexico was chosen for their shelter because of how rampant the issue is there. The group and the organizers are hoping to open up other shelters in Canada here as well.
So we know victims personally already that have been trafficked within Canada and within Alberta. So we do have a big heart for that. We've seen and been a part of rescues already here, but over the course of the next year, we really want to work on setting up homes and resources here in Canada so that people can get the help that they need.
For more information, or if you'd like to get involved with Not For Sale, make sure you visit their website, notforsale.ca. Well, it's been a very enjoyable autumn so far here in southwestern Alberta, but the snow will be here again before you know it. A popular ski resort in southern Alberta is called Castle Mountain. Cole Fawcett, who's the group's marketing manager, says they actually receive more snow than many of the other resorts here in the province, so lots of powder for skiers and snowboarders alike.
Castle has some exceptional terrain. It's has a great variety and has great terrain for advanced and expert level skiers, intermediates and beginners too. But one of the things that really sets us apart from some of our competitors is the mountains on which we occupy. We have an abundance of terrain, and we see the most snow on average in the province of Alberta, period, of any other resort.
Make sure you catch the full interview with Cole Fawcett from Castle Mountain Ski Resort and BCN's Naveen Day coming up later in our broadcast. Well, not a lot of snow here in Lethbridge, but there's a chance of a little bit of moisture developing overnight. Full weather details are on deck. Well, it was cloudy and cooler today in Lethbridge. Tonight, there's a good chance of some rain mixed with snow developing and a low near -7. Thursday, those clouds should be leaving us, and we should see a high near +3. Warming up even more under a mainly sunny sky on Friday to 9 degrees. Saturday, we should see double digits with a high of 11. Cooling off Sunday to 6 degrees, but still loads of sunshine. Monday, a few clouds will return, and we should see a high of 5. Pretty much the same picture on Tuesday. Now, the average high for this time of year is 4 degrees with an average low of -7. The record high was 19 degrees set back in 1995, and the record low was a very chilly -26 in 1959. The sun rose at 7:43 and set at 4:48. Let's see how Thursday's shaping up across the country now. Expect a cloudy sky and a high of 8 degrees in Victoria, mainly sunny and a high of 7 for Vancouver. A chance of flurries developing and a high of 4 degrees for Edmonton on Thursday. Cloudy with a chance of rain and a high of 6 degrees for Calgary. Light snow and -1 degree is on tap for Regina. Mostly clear and 2 degrees for Saskatoon. Snow and 0 is in the forecast for Winnipeg on Thursday. In the central part of the country, it should be mainly sunny and 11 degrees in Toronto. A clear sky and 8 in Ottawa. Mainly sunny and a high of 9 degrees in Montreal. In Atlantic Canada, expect sun mixed with clouds and a high of 8 degrees in Fredericton. Periods of drizzle developing and 9 for Halifax. Showers and 6 for Charlottetown. And in St. John's, it should be overcast with a high of only 0 on Thursday. A $1 billion lithium-ion battery cell production plant will be built in Maple Ridge, British Columbia. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and BC Premier David Eby says the new E1 Moly facility will bolster Canada's role as a global leader in clean technology. The Feds, E1 Moly, and private sources are providing about $970 million, while the province is pitching in with up to $80 million for the project.
This new E1 Moly facility here in Maple Ridge will produce up to 135 million battery cells per year and become the largest factory in Canada for high-performance lithium-ion battery cells. This means great middle-class jobs, great middle-class careers for years to come, and clean, made-in-Canada batteries for tools used in sectors like construction and healthcare.
The plant will produce high-performance lithium cell batteries found in numerous products such as vacuums, medical devices, along with power and garden tools. A startup date is not yet known, but officials say the project will create 450 permanent jobs. Two major grocery retailers saw their profits and sales increase in their latest quarter compared with a year ago. Loblaws reporting a $621 million profit in its third quarter. That is up 5% from a year ago. Metro, meanwhile, is reporting a fourth quarter profit of $222 million. That is up from around $169 million in the same quarter last year as sales increased 14%. Metro adds that a 5-week strike at 27 stores in the Greater Toronto Area during the quarter had a negative impact on its bottom line of about $27 million after taxes. The latest numbers from the Canadian Real Estate Association show the national average home price rose 1.8% last month compared to a year ago. The price is now $656,625. CREA says the number of homes sold in October was up 0.9% over last year. On a month-over-month basis, however, sales in October were down 5.6%, as the association says there were fewer sales in most of Canada's bigger markets. New listings across Canada fell 2.3% from September, marking the first decline since March. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 34 points on the day to finish at 20,057. The Dow was up 163 points to 34,991. The S&P 500 was up 7 on the day to 4502, and the Nasdaq was up 9 points to 14,103. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down $1.72 to $76.54 U.S. per barrel. Natural gas was up a nickel to $3.16 U.S. Gold was down $4.74 on the day to $19.59.55 U.S. an ounce, and silver was up 35 cents to $23.44 U.S. an ounce. Feed wheat is at $9.17 per bushel, barley's at $7.16, canola's at $16.15, and corn is at $8.46 per bushel. Live cattle December contract was up $1.93 to $177.78. Feeder cattle were down 63 cents to $229.43. And lean hogs December contract was down $1.25 to $71.05. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 73.08 US. Recapping one of our top stories, Global Affairs Canada says it is continuing to communicate with Canadians, permanent residents, and their families who are wanting to leave Gaza. The department says it is asking them to have their travel documents on hand and be ready to leave on short notice. No one connected to Canada has been cleared to leave as of yet. You know, there's a ski resort which apparently receives more powder than many of the other resorts you'll find in the Alberta Rockies. Coming up, we're going to chat with Cole Fawcett from Castle Mountain, who discusses what makes his resort so unique for skiers and snowboarders. When you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. And if you missed any of today's local stories, visit our website, bridgecitynews.ca.
Here's today's Bridge City News Community Calendar. Come join the festivities at the second annual Christmas tree lighting event on Friday, November 17th, taking place in Festival Square at 5 p.m. Enjoy live music, pictures with Santa Claus, free cookie decorating, and feel the spirit of the holiday as the 18-foot Christmas tree is lit up for the season. Lethbridge Sport Council's Indoor Roving Gyms program is taking place Tuesdays at Emmanuel Lutheran Church from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. and Thursdays at the Service Sports Center from 10 to 11 a.m. This program is for kids ages 5 and under and their caregivers. Come and enjoy an hour of fun and get active. Pre-registration is required and space is limited. For details and to register, visit lethbridgesportcouncil.ca/roving gyms. And that's today's Bridge City News Community Calendar.
The winter season sees southern Alberta powdered with the white stuff, and I'm talking about snow, which attracts lots of avid skiers to the area. And Cole Fawcett is the go-to guy for all things related to preparing for an exhilarating time on the slopes. He offers valuable insights into the meticulous process of readying the ski hill for the season, shedding light on the behind-the-scenes efforts that ensure optimal conditions and what to watch out for. Cole, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Naveen. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. And now, as the ski season at Castle Mountain approaches, What are the key steps you recommend for avid skiers and snowboarders to prepare themselves for this season on the slopes?
Yeah, great question. So if we can get, we don't want to lapse into not working out, not being active through the fall season. I think that's all too tempting for so many of us as the days get a little bit shorter and the temperatures get a bit cooler. So trying our best to keep active, and even if we can get a little bit of strength training in to keep those legs and that core strong for the coming ski season, because we're going to need those muscles when the snow hits the ground. Aside from that, we want to be looking at our gear, making sure that it's ready for the season. And for most of us, that's only going to necessitate a tune-up of skis or snowboards, so a wax or a sharpen of the edges or a grind of the base to make it nice and smooth and flat again. And of course, that wax on top to make sure that it slides really nice on the snow. So I think those are probably the two major things. And aside from that, it pays to think ahead with respect to looking at season passes or frequency cards, what we call our WOW card, to save money, of course, before the season gets here.
So you talked about physically preparing yourself for the season. Now, before we started recording this interview, I revealed to you that I'm not really into skiing. I'm very much a novice. So what would you recommend to someone like myself who is probably going to be hitting the slopes for the first time this year?
So for first-timers, there are a lot of great resources out there. Visiting any resort's website and exploring lesson options is going to be probably the most pivotal thing. And of course, I mean, the other things that you probably go without saying, like making sure that you have, a nice warm jacket, nice warm snow pants or ski pants, appropriate clothing in general terms is really essential. First timers generally aren't going to run out to a ski shop and buy all the equipment they need, like ski boots, skis, or snowboard and snowboard boots. And that's certainly not necessary. All of the resorts within Alberta and British Columbia and further afar are going to offer equipment rentals. So usually you're going to want to look at a beginner snowboard or a beginner ski package. And by package, we mean it's going to come with instruction. It's going to come with the equipment you need in terms of that technical equipment, like the skis or the snowboard and the boots and the bindings. It will also come with a helmet, which we highly recommend. Nobody wants to knock the noggin while they're out there. And it will come with a ticket, a lift ticket, which is a little thing that you'll just put on your person that allows you access to the ski lifts. And so when you combine that equipment, the instruction, and the lift ticket, those are usually all packaged together at a reasonably attractive rate and on a full day or a half day basis. And that is the best way to introduce yourself to the sport, bar none.
Absolutely, because it sounds like it's all inclusive. It has everything you need there. So could you provide insights into what goes on behind the scenes and the process for preparing the ski hill for the upcoming season?
So, I mean, preparing for the season to come really starts with the end of the season prior. So, as a resort, we're going through processes like establishing budgets and guidelines for and operational dates, as an example, setting those dates out for when we're going to be open the following season, putting plans in place to get enough staff. And then on a more technical term, there's a team of about 24 staff members at Castle Mountain Resort specifically that are here full-time year-round, getting things ready. And a good deal of those folks are on the outside operations or maintenance side of our business. And they're in a situation where they're doing all kinds of off-season preventative maintenance on lifts, on snowcats, on other equipment, such as buildings, of course, snowmaking equipment. So the snow machines that make snow early season to kind of get us that great base on which we start the season on. So we're not, encountering as many other obstacles that may lie beneath the snow coverage. And then we have a number of off-season projects too, kind of lumped on top of all of those normal things that we just have to do each and every season, that normal off-season maintenance. So in terms of what we're doing this season at Castle, we have purchased another new snowcat, which aren't cheap. They're multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Wow.
When you make that investment. Wonderfully capable machines, but extraordinarily expensive. We have added some snowmaking equipment to our fleet to get us in a position where we can be open reliably when we say we intend to be. There is some building maintenance going on, some new roofing on our staff accommodation, some interior upgrades within the day lodge and our cafeteria and our washrooms, and then some equipment upgrades with one of our lifts. The Huckleberry chairlift is getting a new digital drive, which is more or less the brain of the lift and will help us increase the reliability of that lift for years to come.
Now, you've touched on this a bit with improvements you've made to the resort, but for those that might be new to Castle Mountain, what are the distinctive features of your resort that really set it apart from the others, and what should visitors be particularly excited about?
Well, first and foremost, if you're from the greater Lethbridge area, this is the closest Rocky Mountain resort to anybody living in greater Lethbridge, or really anybody in the southwestern portion of the province. So that in and of itself is important to note. You know, Castle has some exceptional terrain. It's has a great variety and has graded terrain for advanced and expert level skiers, intermediates and beginners too. But one of the things that really sets us apart from some of our competitors is the mountains on which we occupy. We have an abundance of terrain, and we see the most snow on average in the province of Alberta, period, of any other resort.
Wow.
Aside from that, there is a certain, I think, different feel to Castle. It's more laid back, it's more homey. It is owned and operated by the community. We have over 200 shareholders who are almost exclusively Albertans and who put their money into the resort basically to see it continue to exist kind of from the mid-90s onward, when it wasn't quite as vibrant, and it wasn't in a position where it was sustainable. And today, at least at this point in time, we are on a path to sustainability and on a path to upgrading some of the assets that we have here, some of the older lifts, as an example.
And beyond skiing itself, resorts often offer a variety of activities and events. Could you share some of the events and activities that Castle Mountain has planned for this upcoming season?
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of the specific dates, we're in a situation where those are still being mulled over, I guess you could say. Most of our programming is going to be ski or snowboard related, whether it's an on-mountain scavenger hunt, or it's a ski race, or a freestyle competition, or a big mountain competition. Most of what we have here is going to take place on the snowy slopes in some way, shape, or form. As far as non-skiing stuff goes, we do offer a cross-country ski network here at the resort. It's pretty small, but it exists. And adjacent to us within the Castle Provincial Park, there are some maintained, groomed cross-country skiing and snowshoe trails, very close proximity to us. And I mean, aside from that, you know, the other thing that we have that's unique to Castle and is actually very unique in North America is we have kind of what most people would think of as a ski resort with ski lifts, and you take the lift up and you ski down a run, and it may be all natural terrain or like powder, or it may be groomed nightly. But we also have something called cat skiing or snowcat skiing. And that's where you actually hop into one of these snowcats, and it has a cabin on the back of it that's kind of like a minibus in a sense, but it's capable of climbing snow-covered mountains. And cat skiing for us is a very exclusive experience. It's only 12 people per day, 5 days a week, and they get about 1,000 acres of skiable terrain all to themselves. So that's very unique. A lot of cat skiing operations are like in the backcountry. Sometimes you'll fly in via helicopter, or there'll be heli skiing operations. But at Castle, we actually have both of those operations kind of side by each. In fact, you actually take one of the chairlifts to get up to the cat, and then every run you go up the lift, up the cat, ski down, and then repeat that several times a day. So
that cat
it's quite
skiing
unique.
sounds a lot of fun. So what recommendations do you have for visitors regarding maintenance and selecting the right equipment for the conditions they might occur at the mountain?
Yeah, well, some might say, especially if you're in the ski industry, you can never have enough pairs of skis or snowboards. But really, that's not a feasible thing for most of the population.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, you want to select. I'm not a great expert in this field. There are some great experts in equipment selection at retail stores across Alberta and beyond, of course, and some great resources online. But certainly doing your homework, putting some time into understanding what ski or snowboard works best in what conditions, and putting some thought into where you like to go on the mountains and what type of terrain you like to access. Those are all really valuable things to put a little bit of time and thought into. But certainly there's no substitute for visiting your local ski or snowboard shop. These folks that are generally employed there live, eat, and breathe the sport.
That's amazing. Now, snow quality is a major factor for skiers. How does Castle Mountain manage the snowmaking and grooming operations to ensure consistent and high quality snow cover throughout the season? You talked about purchasing new equipment in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So prior to 2019, we didn't make snow here at all. We relied solely on what Mother Nature brought us. And that is in itself a huge risk to the business, of course. But we have, over the last, 4 years primarily, we've invested more than $2 million in snowmaking infrastructure. And this is a big part of the reason why, right this moment in time, we're, not announcing, new lift infrastructure going in, because those are extraordinarily expensive, pardon me. We're still working on paying down, some of the debt from the major infrastructure that we've put in, and most notably snowmaking. So generally speaking, we are making snow where we have that underground infrastructure. So maybe I'll back up. In order to make snow, you need high pressure water and high pressure air. And that stuff doesn't just magically appear on the mountain. It's piped up there. So underground, there are kilometers of steel pipe for water. And then that is connected and electrical too. So we need electricity. So we've got electrical cabling and water piping going up the mountain in various locations. And the snow machine or the snow maker is connected to that at where we need it, at those pedestals, I guess we call them, or outlets for water and electricity. So if you can just imagine the infrastructure that's in a city to get water to your home, as an example, we have something similar to that here, except on a mountain in the Rockies. So that's really pivotal. Most resorts are going to have this. And of course, we're no exception in this day and age. And so you connect your snowmaking equipment, your guns, sometimes they're referred to, or machines. And basically that high pressure water is thrust up into the air with high pressure air, and it falls down as snow. Slightly more scientific than that. But when it's cold enough, it'll just fall down as snow. So when we talk about getting ready for the season, snowmaking is a really essential part of this. We spend dozens and dozens and dozens of days and hundreds, if not thousands, of human hours on making it. And it's all in the name of getting a good surface down in the event that Mother Nature doesn't deliver. And even if she does, it serves as a great base to help protect us and our equipment from some of the natural hazards that lie beneath.
Well, that was very educational and informative for me. I hope that our viewers got a lot out of that too. That was Cole Fawcett with the Castle Mountain Ski Resort. Cole, thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
An assistant professor at the University of Lethbridge and a filmmaker have teamed up to release a film highlighting their work in preserving endangered plant species across Alberta. To give us a better understanding of the journey behind this film, we welcome its creator, Professor Jenny McCune. Welcome to the show today, Jenny. Great to have you on.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, so your movie is called The Quiet Green Creatures. I love that title. It reminds me of a little swamp monster or something, but that's not at all what we're talking about. So maybe tell us, what is the little film about? It's about 4.5 minutes long?
Yeah, it's a little video film that we put together about the research that my students are doing with endangered plants. And so The Quiet Green Creatures is kind of a play on the idea that people often don't think about plants as creatures, but they are. They're a big component of Canada's wildlife. And so I wanted to kind of do something that would be accessible, that people could learn about what we're working on.
No, that's so interesting. What inspired you to create it?
Well, even way back when I was a graduate student, I sort of heard a lot about the importance of communicating your research beyond the academic community and communicating it to the general public. And I went to a little workshop about making these little videos, and I thought, ooh, one day I want to do that.
What a great idea. I love that. And we are in the age of communication and definitely social media and filmmaking. So what better way than to kind of showcase your work there? So how did you originally get interested in plants and botany?
Ooh, that's a great question. I grew up on a farm in Southern Ontario, and so I did a lot of gardening and went on canoe trips in the summer and things like that. But I had a really, really good biology teacher in high school that did a great job with the plant part of it. And I sort of just became fascinated with the plants, and they're different than us, right? They're sort of like aliens in a way. They don't move around like we do, and they don't communicate like we do, but they're living creatures. And so I guess, yeah, it was way back in high school when I started kind of being interested in plants.
Mm-hmm. And there's so much research, it seems, coming out right now about plants and how they, I don't know, like how they interact and stuff. It's really interesting. It's kind of fascinating. But getting back to the film, so in the film, you're basically saying that there are currently plant species in Alberta and around the world that aren't flourishing, right? So what's limiting them from thriving?
Yeah, so in Canada, we have some close to 4,000 different species of vascular plants. And the major reason that some of them are at risk of extinction is because they grow mostly in the southern part of our country, which is also where we like to live and work. And so we've been clearing a lot of their habitat for centuries to make way for our housing, our agriculture, our industry, and things like that. And so in our case, we're working a lot, we're focused on these plant species in Southern Ontario, which used to be about 80% at least covered with forest, and now, depending on what county you're in, is somewhere between 5 and 40%. Yeah. And so they're limited to these little chunks of forest kind of surrounded by, ag fields, cornfields, pastures, subdivisions, and cities. And so that can really take a toll on their ability to thrive, to move around the landscape. And of course, it also comes with other threats like exotic invasive species, changes in the herbivory, like are there more deer around chomping on them, things like that.
Yeah, it sounds like we're almost all competing for the same space right there.
Exactly, that's the thing. And if we can't leave, I mean, it's not just plants; it's endangered animals too. The biggest cause of them being endangered is us taking up more and more of their habitat. So if we can't set aside some for them, we might lose them.
Yeah. So what are the main factors putting these plants at risk? Is it humans basically?
Yeah, I would say it's almost all human caused or things that are linked up with things that humans are doing on the landscape. In some cases, we don't really know why some of them are so rare. So that's one of the things we're trying to test. So with the wood poppy that we're working with, there are only 5 populations in all of Canada. They're all in southern Ontario, but they seem to be able to grow quite well, even in, people have planted them in their garden and they do quite well. So our hypothesis we're trying to test is maybe there is other habitat in the area that's suitable. It's just that they can't get their seeds there because their seeds are dispersed by ants. And so if you think about how far an ant could go, it's probably not going to cross a 100-acre cornfield, to get to a new place.
Exactly. Is there a specific type of plant life that you're currently trying to save, and why?
Well, Southern Ontario, Ontario in total has about 77-ish species of plants that are listed under our Federal Species at Risk Act. So there are plenty to choose from. We're focused on 2 for these trials where we're planting them. One is called the wood poppy and one is called the crooked stem aster. And so we've chosen those for various reasons. One of them being they produce tons of seeds. And so we can get seeds from those existing populations without causing any danger to the population. We wouldn't want to collect seeds from a tiny population that only produces a few every year.
Okay, well, you're an assistant professor at the University of Lethbridge. Are there any plant species around these parts, around southern Alberta, that you're specifically monitoring?
Yeah, we haven't studied any of Alberta's endangered plants. Here in Alberta, most of the plants that are listed on Canada's Species at Risk Act here are grassland plants, of course, because we're in the, down here in the south especially, it's the native vegetation is the grasslands, and those are the things that were cleared to make way for agricultural crops and things like that. So those include things like western spiderwort and the hair-footed loco weed and all these cool little grassland species. We haven't worked on any of those yet. We've done a bit of work in Waterton Lakes looking at the response of plants after the big fire that happened there in 2017. But we haven't focused on any endangered plants here yet.
Okay, and are there plants that are kind of at risk around here?
There's definitely some rare ones, and whether or not they're at risk, some of them definitively are. So I think there's 12 in total that are rare enough and at risk enough to be listed under that Federal Species at Risk Act. Those ones are definitely, on the edge just because their native grassland habitat has been so reduced over time. But then there's others that are just rare and maybe doing fine in a few places, like in the mountains. And, we don't know about very many populations, but hopefully, because they're growing high up in the alpine somewhere, they won't lose habitat, at least not to human development.
Right.
They might face a problem due to climate change if it gets too hot for them.
How do you monitor the growth of these plants, even the ones in Ontario that you're kind of looking at?
Yeah, so the ones that we're monitoring, so we're monitoring the existing populations and we're also monitoring the ones that we plant. So what we do is we mark individual plants, we give them a little name tag basically, and we track them every year. So we measure how tall they grow, how many leaves they produce, how many flowers they produce, and how many fruits they produce. So that gives us an idea of how well they're doing. Are they reproducing? Are they growing really tall? And how does that change from year to year?
Okay, no, that's interesting. Almost like a little report card there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, that's neat. During the process of filming, did your team encounter any challenges?
I mean, field work is always challenging. You know, you're out there with the mosquitoes and the humidity and the rain. I worry. So here, when I have students out in here in the mountains, I worry about bears. In Ontario, I don't worry about bears. I worry about ticks. So ticks carrying Lyme disease are an issue. But while we were filming, I mean, we just had fun. I just had this little GoPro camera that I bought, and I just sort of filmed us as we were walking and planting and measuring things. And I wish that we had been there at the time of year when the wood poppy is in bloom, because it really is a spectacularly beautiful flower when it's in bloom.
Okay.
And in the film, it isn't in bloom, but it has fruits on it, so you can see the fruits, but not the
I
flowers.
saw the little green fruits. They weren't quite ripe yet. What time of year were you filming?
Oh gosh, when was I there? It must have been late June.
Okay. Yeah, it definitely looked summery, a lot, very, very green. Yeah, but it
Yeah.
almost looked a little rainy as well. Yeah, so basically big challenges are like the environmental elements, pretty much.
Yeah,
The
I mean,
climate,
if you're going to be a plant ecologist, you have to be ready to spend all day out in the forest with the
100%.
mosquitoes.
There you
Yeah.
go. Now, the short film communicates the importance of biodiversity. So what do you hope viewers will take away from it?
Well, I always try and raise the profile of plants a little bit. You know, I think a lot of people, when they think of endangered species, they think of caribou or maybe even tigers and pandas and elephants and things like that. But I think it's important to get the word out that, you know, endangered species include these quiet green creatures, these plants. And you know, people love plants. It's not that we don't love plants, that people fill their houses with house plants and they get into their gardening. And so just hoping to kind of raise awareness that we also have some plant creatures that we're worried about here and that we're trying to conserve.
Okay, interesting. So what can the average person do about all of this? Like, for instance, are there any specific actions or changes that you hope your audience will be motivated to take after watching the film?
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, I mean, the things that an ordinary person can do, like one thing that I do is I support local land trusts, because they're often the groups that are helping to preserve nice pieces of habitat and so that those habitat pieces won't get developed. So here in Alberta, for example, we have the Southern Alberta Land Trust Association, I think it's called SALTS. You can donate to a place like that. Also, just, you know, supporting designation of parks and protected areas and things like that, and voting for people who support that.
Okay.
But also just getting out and noticing the plants, you know, now with apps like iNaturalist, where you can snap a picture, you can put it on the internet, and you can learn what species it is really quickly, is a great way to learn. Yeah, a great way to learn more about the plants that you have, you know, right in your backyard or in your local park. you know?
Yeah, for sure. Do you believe that this film could even spark an interest in the younger generation to gain a better understanding of your field?
Yeah, I hope so. I was saying it's another sort of aspect of it is, you know, having it up on my website as kind of a tool for potential grad students to see, right? Or even undergraduates that might want to work with us. Every summer, we hire undergraduates to come out and be our field assistants. And so it's a way for them to see, you know, what is it really like doing that job? Like, what is it like being out there in the forests for 3 months of the summer?
Yeah, for sure. Now, collaborative efforts are often very crucial in conservation projects, but are you able to maybe elaborate on some of the partnerships and collaborations in your film?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the project itself is not just me. It's a group of collaborators, including the Wilder Institute, which is based at the Calgary Zoo. They are experts in reintroducing and translocating animals, but they wanted to, you know, support us to learn more about using this tool for plants. And then the Nature Conservancy of Canada is a really important partner because they are the ones that have the land that we're working on. So they have these intact forests that we know are going to be preserved well into the future. And then we worked with a First Nations run native plant nursery called Guyana Say, and on the Six Nations Reserve in Southern Ontario. And so they were really important because obviously we were not going to grow 5,000 plants in Alberta and drive them to Ontario. We needed a place to grow them there.
That would have been a movie in itself there, about how you even did that. And then, yeah, and then speaking of filming, you mentioned you just had a little GoPro. Did you have another filmmaker with you, or somebody that you kind of collaborated with to help you edit or anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. So, I came back with just this footage that I just gathered, and I was like, okay, here I am at this university that has, a whole new media program. There must be someone that can help me. So I was put in contact with Rodrigo Henriquez, who is the director, and just sort of said, here's all this footage. Here's a script of a voiceover that I wrote.
Okay.
Can you help me?
Do something with it. Help me.
Yeah. And so he's
Amazing.
got his own little company that does that kind of thing. And he was able to edit, splice all the things together, find this great music to put in the background. And I got to be in a studio, with headphones on, doing the voiceover.
No,
So it was
really
really
great. Do you plan on doing any more films with Rodrigo in the future?
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah. And we've got more work coming up, both in Ontario and here in Southern Alberta. So it was a great experience. And I think, it's just a nice way to communicate what you're doing in a short, digestible piece.
Definitely. Yeah. It's not like a long documentary. It's just really short and to the point. And no, it was great.
Yeah.
Johnny, thanks so much for your time today. It looks like we're out of time here.
Oh, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
No, it was great to kind of understand a little bit more about the work that you do. So thank you for that. Jenny McCune is an assistant professor at the University of Lethbridge and a botanist who has worked to protect endangered plant species across Alberta and Ontario, and I guess beyond. So great to have her on today. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.